right. This is a recorded version of the usually live Nature Journal show that happens on Sundays. And I'm super excited about Inktober for nature journalers. Inktober is such a good 30 or 31 day challenge that gets you inspired to do some art every single day. But I'm really excited to have made a list that is specifically for nature journalers so that the prompts are better for what we are usually doing. So I'm going to switch to my document camera right now. I'm going to go through all of the prompts for the month. Today is October 1st, but this is going to come out on Sunday. And so by that time, hopefully you'll already be on to the third of these. I'm going to go over them real quick. I'm going to talk about some good ink tools for nature journalers and go through each prompt. All right, we'll switch it to the document camera now. So a lot of people might be asking, to start with, why ink? Why should I use ink? I really love my graphite pencil. The pencil's so good for so many things. Well, let me show you one of my old nature journals. This is about my fourth nature journal, approximately, and I was using graphite at the time. You can definitely not see very much of what's going on here because it is so pale from the graphite. Now, the watercolor adds a little bit of value to it, and you can see over here, I think this was like a gray ink pen maybe that I'm using for my borders, and the borders stand out, but inside it's very pale. One more example, it's really hard to read any of the writing. Look at this nature journal page right here. You can barely see it. So in comparison, look at some work that I did in a more recent journal, number 44, and you can see here how much more readable this is compared to that other journal. From a distance, you can see these fish. It's very obvious what they are, and here it is just so pale, it's very hard to see what is going on. So that is definitely one of the benefits of ink, because when we're nature journaling, getting a bold mark really quickly and something that is readable is very important. So those are 3 good reasons why to use ink. Obviously, there are some downsides to ink. It can be messy. It's not permanent, it is permanent, which can be a downside and a benefit. So I showed you some examples there. Obviously, it can be messy. Let me show you. You can see that I spilled ink and it just covered the whole side of the paper here. And I think on my Ecuador trip, I spilled a bunch of ink at the beginning as well. Certain tools can be messier than others. Let me see if I can find that ink spill. You can see here is when I was transitioning from using pencil to using just ink. And here is a page where this tool right here, I was in Quito, Ecuador, so it might have been either the altitude or from having been on a plane, but this tool leaked. So these Kuretake brush pens can definitely leak when you first open them up, so don't open it up over your journal. So that was a mess. So that is one downside of ink, is that it can be messy. So I'm going to quickly go through some tools here and describe them to you. I think a lot of people are going to be using micron pens, and those work for some people. They don't really work very well for me anymore. I do like some of the ones that have a fatter tip, but I haven't been really carrying microns, to tell you the truth, lately. The way I hold my pen, a lot of times it doesn't really land very well, the edge of it, and you don't get line variation. I really appreciate line variation. So the tools that I'm leaning more towards these days is I'll go sort of most practical first. These Pilot Fudayaku pens are amazing, and this is definitely my pen that I use for everything and always carry nature journaling. It has gray ink on one side, so I can do my metadata and all of my text, for example, with gray ink. I also use the gray ink for my watercolors. It's a great way to do a landscape, for example. You can see here I use the gray for all of the text here. Let me show you a couple landscapes. These landscapes, I did gray drawing and then put the watercolor on top, and the gray sort of almost fades away. You can see how I use the gray a lot, and it allows for you to create a visual hierarchy. So here, for example, you can see the visual hierarchy, and you can see how quickly I'm able to record information with that bold ink really fast. These are all insects that visited a plant. So ink has a lot of benefits, and this Fudayaku pen from Pilot is one of my favorites. You can get a lot of line variation. And I'll have links to all of these in the description below. So you can get a lot of line variation with this type of tip. I really like it a lot. Okay, next one is that I'll describe is the actually I'll go with this one first. So this is a Pentel brush pen, and this one has the last one is sort of imitating the tip of a brush, but this one actually has bristles on it. I have not taken this one on the plane, but it can be really good for calligraphy. I have not been carrying this one in the field with me that much, but I know that Robin Carlson uses it, and I like the line work and line variation she gets from it. So this is sort of a smaller one that you could carry that provides a lot of line variation. You could do borders for different aspects of your nature journaling, and you can draw with it as well, of course. And similar to that would be this one. I carry this one specifically for borders or for when I have to put in a lot of black ink. I need to write Pentel next to this one. And this one is Pentel also, I believe. And it's like the Kuretake brush. This one is the one that is not water soluble. It's pigment based. Sometimes I use it for big, bold lettering. It's really fun. Obviously, the line variation is impressive. Especially, I mean, compare this to a micron. That's a lot of line variation. And you can put down huge areas of dark ink, which is something really important. I'm going to talk about that a lot this month. But the one that I'm using the most now, in addition to this Pilot Fudayaku, I'm going to put a star next to that one because that one is one of my favorites. And then this one too. And this is by Sailor, and it's a fountain pen, and it's called the Fude de Manin. It comes with water-soluble ink in cartridges, sort of like this, that are water-soluble and really convenient to put in there. They are convenient, but unfortunately, I don't want water-soluble because I sometimes do use watercolor with it. So I use a converter that's inside of there that allows for you to fill the ink. And I'm using this carbon ink. I did a bunch of research on what types of permanent inks work for fountain pens, and this is one of the better ones because not all permanent inks are safe to use in fountain pens. They'll plug them up. And this carbon ink right here it's platinum carbon ink. It's really good, and it just is a mess to refill. So what that means, from my experience, this this refillable sort of converter thing that is in here, it doesn't hold that much ink. So if I go on a nature journaling trip that lasts 2 days and I'm nature journaling every day, this will run out of ink. So what I do now is I carry 2 of them in my bag and I fill them both up. They're a little bit annoying to fill, so that's the main downside. A couple other tools I'm going to mention is this is the Pentel. This is just like the Aquash, the one we use for watercolor, but it's full of pigment ink, and it's actually a gray ink. So it makes a really cool, it makes a very nice warm gray, and I like it because you can make these really cool borders with it. You could also draw a tree with this. So this would be really fun for like the day 1 Inktober challenge for nature journaling, which was drawing a gnarled tree. And this would be a perfect thing to practice doing something like that very quickly. Or like a Monterey pine or a cypress tree that has that kind of foliage that's all blocked together in cool ways. This would be a really great tool for drawing that and just practicing. Even if this is not the drawing tool you're going to use all the time, it can be a really fun one to practice with occasionally that can inform your other drawing tools. Those are my favorite ink tools. I'll talk more about some other ink tools probably later in the month, but let's go through the different prompts, because what I want to do is provide a little bit of information about the different prompts so that in case people want to look something up, they can. But I also kind of left them open-ended. That way people can, who don't need all of the details, people can be creative with how they interpret the prompts. So let me bring the document camera a little bit closer here. So hopefully you'll be able to see this better. Raising the table, that's what that noise is, just raising the table up here. Can move the camera, but can also move the table. Okay, hopefully that looks pretty visible there. Might be slightly small, but you can find all of these on my website, marleypfeiffer.com, and I'll be posting a lot more information about the Inktober challenge on there. So the first one is Gnarly Old Tree. This is a good place to start, because drawing old trees, if you're not comfortable with ink yet, drawing an old tree can be a really safe way to get started. You could even just probably make one up from your imagination in a couple minutes, and that would get you started, because this is a month-long challenge. We're trying to do every single day some nature journaling. And so making each session sort of more attainable is going to help you make the month-long accomplishment attainable, and that's what matters. So, like for example, I just did. I would consider that could actually count for number one. Obviously, ideally for nature journaling, we're looking at real things in nature. But if you don't have a gnarly old tree near you, then you can definitely look at a photo or even make one up from your imagination and just kind of get warmed up with this idea of using ink all month long. But I do want to point out that there can be really cool, charismatic old trees in urban areas, in parks a lot of times, old cities, cemeteries, on the sidewalk, in playgrounds. Look for gnarled old trees near you, and you'll probably find one, and they can be really, really fun to draw. I have several episodes about that. Okay, next one is local landscape pizza with dark darks. So a lot of times our landscape pizzas can come out really pale. I showed you some of my very early ones from one of my old journals, and you can't even tell what's going on in them because they're so pale, or they're just, yeah, look at that, you can't see. And so for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to do a landscape ito, so a small landscape painting, but we're going to make the darks really dark, so push those darks into the background. Next is going to be a messy sketch of a moving animal. So this is where you're doing sort of quick sketches to learn about something. It's not about creating a finished product. So these fish, for example, look at some of these sketches. Like this one right here, it's so weird. It's like only partial of a fish. A lot of these are like that, and I'm just quickly trying to capture them as I am able. So let me find another one. Here's another example with a spider. Some of these are really quick while it's moving, while things are happening. And I'm also using arrows, you can see, as a tool to show movement. That's what I'm doing here. This is a leg of a spider that's moving by itself. So those are all things, those are all examples of doing sort of a messy sketch of a moving animal. And for this one, for day number 3, if you can see the animal in real life, of course, that'd be great. So like if you go watch a bird feeder, or able to see any birds from your window, or anything that you can see outside, if you go to a zoo or an aquarium, or even maybe like at a pet store, you could draw moving fish. So on that one, you can also look at videos of moving animals. There's a lot of YouTube videos that have animals. That's what I like to do. Okay, and then this one is a good one to give yourself some sort of creative exploration. What is the blackest flower, and what would that be like to depict with an ink tool? Sometimes it can be fun to find things that push the limits of what you're able to do with your colors. Day number 5 is quick sketch an invertebrate, so something that has no backbone. And similar to the messy sketch, how can you capture that information quickly and use the drawing sort of as a way to learn about that creature? So my spider would count as like a moving animal and a quick sketch of an invertebrate. So can you find any spiders? What is it like to try to just capture that quickly? Or like a bee. Sometimes when I see bees outside, all I'm able to capture is like something like this. I try to, like, if I'm seeing different species of bumblebees, all I might see is that shape of them. But what would it be like to keep going back there, and like how much more detail could you get the more times you look at it? Maybe with your close focus binoculars, maybe you'll start seeing some more details and be able to add some of those on. But any of these would count as a quick sketch for an invertebrate. Draw a skull with a story. So I tried to get some spooky themes in here, since it is a spooky time of year. And what is a skull that you could find that has a story? And this could be something that you find or you read about, and it's up to you to interpret what that means, because and obviously it doesn't, this looks like a hominid skull, but it obviously can be many different types of skulls. I'm going to draw a cartoon fish skull. I think I can. It can be, that doesn't look like a skull, but it can be any type of skull that you want. And what is the story, and how can drawing, ink or otherwise, tell a story? Something living in a corner. This spider would have counted for that one too. But go nature journal something that's living in a corner using ink. And I would recommend, on a lot of these, like even if you can just make it a 10-minute session, tell yourself you're going to nature journal for 10 minutes for each prompt. And I think that you'll find that on a lot of them you do more, and that on the ones that you only do 10 minutes, you actually can get a lot done. Really, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, after that, 5 blind contour drawings of bones. So blind contour drawings are if you hold something out, you're holding it out in front of you, but you're only looking, you have to hold it kind of further away than what I'm doing right now from your pen or pencil, because you're drawing it without looking at it. If you don't understand that concept, do a little Google search on blind contour drawing. But basically, you're going to do 5 blind contour drawings of bones. All right, day number 9 is going to be another interpretive one. And so this is up to you how you want to nature journal this. You could do some research and find things to draw. And also, obviously, note-taking is part of, if you're a nature journaler, you should already know that it's words, images, and numbers. So a lot of Inktober challenges are just going to be drawings, but since we're nature journalers, we know that words, images, and numbers all have their strengths. So try to incorporate all of those. And obviously, ink tools can be good for writing and note-taking, and for numbers just as well as they can be good for drawing. So don't forget those 3 languages. Then after poisonous or venomous is nocturnal nature journaling. I have a couple videos about this, but this is the challenge, to go out there and nature journal at night. So that page where I nature journaled the spider, that was at night. I didn't have to have a headlamp because I was actually right out in front of a porch. Here's another example. So this could be nocturnal nature journaling. You go out to the porch and you see what bugs are out there, and you try to draw them. So I did all this with ink. This is with the Pilot Fudayaku. So I used the gray for the writing, and the black for most of the drawing. This is a really simple technique. Porch light nature journaling is probably the easiest way you could do nocturnal nature journaling for day 10. Next one, another chance for you to interpret it, role reversal in nature. What does that look like to you? Role reversal in nature. Trying to make a symbol for that. Animal tracks. This will be a really fun one. Go and look for some animal tracks and try to draw them. And remember, even if you can't see the individual track, there can be a trail that might give you an indication to the gait of the animal. And sometimes the gait is all you need to figure it out. And ink is a good tool for drawing tracks. Oh yeah, number 13, nature comic, nature event. This spider page would have also worked for that because I was showing how the spider captured a food item and carried it. Another example of a nature comic maybe, oh, so here we go. So here's the spider. I watched it. I grabbed this other, I think these are called harvestmen. It's like a daddy long legs. I threw it in the web where this other spider was and then tried to make a nature comic of what happened next. See how I use arrows? I use lots of words and numbers, and this is all done with the feuille de monin at night under the light of a porch light. So that would be a nature comic, nature event. Number 14, this is a classic nature journaling tool that a lot of people use with like oranges. And you can cross-section the orange or another fruit and nature journal that. If you want, you could also do an animal and maybe something that you're eating even. You could do that and nature journal that, because this is something that Leonardo da Vinci basically pioneered. But by drawing while you're taking something apart, you can learn more about it and see it from the inside. This could apply to non-living things as well. So think about what, maybe one of your art supplies, like what does the inside of this pen look like? Take it apart and nature journal it using ink. This is another one for you to interpret on your own. I'm not even going to give you any ideas, but how do you want to nature journal that concept and what are you going to look up? It doesn't mean you have to find something like that that is where you live. Carnivorous plant, yes. Carnivorous plant's a great thing to nature journal any time of year, but especially, especially if it is sort of Halloween time of year. There's something kind of spooky about carnivorous plants, I guess. This was one that was growing in a fen. It's like a bog. You can see how I used feuille de monin, pilot Fudayaku pen around the outside and gray, the gray side for the writing. So do a carnivorous plant. You could obviously do it. It doesn't have to be in situ, so you can do it from a house plant or from a photo or a video. Here we go, 17, use an ink tool you aren't used to. So what is one ink tool you've never used before? Have you ever used one of these brush pens? Maybe you should try that. Maybe you should try a Tombow pen, a different type of ink, water-soluble ink. Maybe you should try a fountain pen or something water-soluble, or a dip pen. Those are all different ink tools that you can use. Day 18, subterranean. I'll let you interpret that how you want, but it could be something near you or something that you research. Nearby nature map. So maps are a classic nature journaling technique. So make a map of something near you. Maybe you've done maps before in pencil, and this feels a little bit edgy doing it in ink. Here's an example of sort of mapping of these rapids of part of this river that I was looking at. So sort of a different type of map, but how could you show an area on a map and make that nearby nature? So even if you live in an apartment building, how can you show a map maybe of what is outside of your building and what is nearby, or even a map of your houseplants? Skyscapeito. So this one will be really fun. Oh, I had an example of this in ink, but I can't find it right now. How can you nature journal some clouds, for example, and the sky using ink tools only? One hint, maybe water soluble would be good for this one. Otherwise, you might be using, you could use pointillism maybe, or cross hatching. But how can you draw something kind of pale with a dark ink? That'll be a fun challenge for Skyscapito. Water soluble ink. Okay, so perfect timing right after Skyscapito would be water soluble ink. I don't have one here with me right this moment, but I use the Pilot Precise pen for that. I'll write it here, Pilot. Usually I like to write all these things in the ink of that thing, but that's the one that I often use. And then you combine it with, for example, your water brush, and you can achieve a lot of things. Or you could have a fountain pen with water-soluble ink, since that's what a lot of them come with anyways. Okay, fall leaves with ink and color. Yeah, combining black ink with color can be really, really fun. And so here's an example. Can you combine black ink and watercolor to depict fall leaves? So if you're in the northern hemisphere, then the days are getting shorter right now, and the leaves start turning color in places where the trees go dormant. So can you draw fall leaves with ink and color? Next, animal eyes. I'll let you interpret this how you want, but I'm sure you can find some cool stuff out there for that one. Abiotic nature. This is really important. So a lot of times we think of nature as living things, but nature is also the non-living thing. So for example, let me show you this page where I was nature journaling about the waves and trying to understand how this pattern shows up on beaches. And you can see I'm using gray ink from the Pilot Fudayaku pen for the whole thing, and a little bit of watercolor. There's a Landscapito that's all black ink right there. So that would be an example of abiotic nature, anything that is not living. So for example, raindrops or rain, anything that has to do, this dries out sometimes if I leave it. Weather, crystals, lightning, clouds, erosion, friction, steam, those kinds of things are all abiotic nature. Does that look like a lightning bolt? Oh, maybe it's time for the lightning round. Next one, metamorphosis. Obviously, you interpret that the way you want. How can you do metamorphosis in ink? Birds in flight, super fun with ink. You can probably do this because you learned how to do that in elementary school, but try to see what they look like when they're more sort of like sideways to you, or like coming, I don't know, have their one wing is pointing straight towards you and they kind of just look like that. What does that look like? And just draw a bunch of them, birds in flight with ink. Super good practice. Nature journal a pet. I did a whole video about this. Even if your pet is just, boring cat or dog, then that's still fun to nature journal. And that's the cool thing about nature journaling, is you notice things that you didn't notice before. So it could be chickens too. Maybe you have chickens and you've never nature journaled them before. That's a shame. So this also will help you realize the sort of biases that you have in your mind, and why don't more people nature journal chickens or cows? There's probably a lot of cool questions you could ask about them. Flock, school, herd, etc. This one will be really fun. I can't wait to see the results. Creative lettering. Ink can be really fun for lettering. So practice some creative lettering in your nature journal with ink. What do bubble letters look like in ink? Some of these brushes are going to be your friend when it comes to custom creative lettering. Okay, you could probably do some really cool stuff with them. Okay, something you are scared to draw. This is a great one. Maybe it's your husband. You look at him all the time, um, but you're afraid maybe that he'll make fun of you, um, or whatever. So sometimes we're afraid to draw the things that we care a lot about. So for example, like for me, I love orchids, and I want to make them like so perfect that sometimes I'm just too afraid to even try drawing them. So what is that thing for you? Is there something that you care so much about, or for some other reason you're really scared of drawing like a what is that? It's a brontosaurus. Maybe you really don't want to draw that. So draw something that you're scared of. We're saving this towards the last because that's kind of a challenging one. Nature journal in your kitchen. What is a way that you could find something in your kitchen to nature journal? It could be fruits or vegetables that you cut up. It could be a recipe. What about steam? How many people have nature journaled about steam coming off of pasta that's cooking? Or even ice cubes. There's probably a lot of interesting questions you could ask and things you can nature journal about ice cubes. And I'm even afraid to draw an ice cube with ink because it's such a weird thing. So I'm going to go ahead and draw one. I'll put some melting water underneath it. That'll help show that it's an ice cube. So like, what are some things that you can nature journal in your kitchen? So I didn't really make a hashtag for this, but maybe it could just be Inktober Nature Journal. Hashtag. Whoa. Come on. This pen maybe doesn't like this paper. This weird printer paper. Hashtag. Oh, I'm going to switch pens because it's just not working. Inktober. Oh, it's not going to fit. It's not going to fit. Nature. Oh, it's going to fit. It's going to fit. Journal. That's kind of a long hashtag. But if you want to do that when you post your stuff on social media. If you post it, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is consistently nature journaling every day for the month of October. Even if you're not super excited about ink, it's not really about ink. It's about nature journaling every single day for a month, because the couple of times where I have actually taken up a challenge like that and nature journaled every single day for a month, it's been so beneficial and so fun. And I've learned so many things that I wasn't expecting about like nature journaling at home or nature journaling in those little bits of time that we actually do have. Everybody has them in their day. If you don't have time for nature journaling, watch my video, How to Nature Journal When You Don't Have Time. And if you can't wait all the way until next week, until the next episode of the show, check out any of my other videos or playlists, or even better yet, do some ink drawing from these prompts. And the whole thing is available on my website, marleypfeiffer.com. Go ahead and share it if you want. And let's try to nature journal every single day this month. Bye. See you Wednesday.